I had begun to hang around the playhouse as soon as I learned that the community theater group would be putting on a production of A Guts and Garters, a 3-act comedy written by J. Jones. The play is set in Victorian era New England. I was only 15 years old, but they tolerated me and let me help out. I ran errands, assisted in the construction of the scenery, and helped the actors with their lines. I did just about anything that the director needed to have done. In return, I received a small sense of satisfaction and a front row seat to all of the rehearsals. But even more importantly, I got access to the wardrobe department. Now this was the stuff that dreams are made of. Whenever opportunity presented itself, and my hands were free of dirt, grime, and paint, I would look at and feel the wonderful costumes that the actors would wear in the production. The director was striving for realism, so the costumes were historically accurate. I had heard several of the women complaining about having to wear a corset, and I couldn't understand why they were objecting. The corsets gave them the most wonderful figures, and they looked so marvelous in them. Ever since I had seen the movie Gone with the Wind, I had begun to romanticize the second half of the 19th century. I had spent enormous amounts of time at my local library reading everything that I could find about the period following the Civil War, up to the turn of the century. My library card was so battered and worn that my picture was barely recognizable. Most of the time, the scanner would not be able to read the imprinted barcode. The librarians all knew me, of course, and would just punch in the numbers as I called them out. Mrs. Parker, the head librarian, would always tell me to have a new one made up the next time that I came in, but they were usually busy when I got there, so it never got done. Since the condition of my old card never prevented me from taking books out, I didn't give the matter of getting a replacement a very high priority. Each day, after school let out, I hurried to the library. My schoolmates would run home to change so that they could play some sports game or other, but I couldn't wait to explore the wonderful world of books and literature. Besides, I was terrible at sports. I was small and puny when compared to the jocks. And on the rare occasions when I had tried to join their games, I was either not allowed to, or I was ridiculed when I muffed a play. I didn't have to have a building land on me to know that I was not destined for a career in sports. So, my books became my dearest friends. Plus, I met a number of nice girls at the library. Just because I wasn't a jock, it didn't mean that I was ugly. In fact, my Aunt Jessica was always telling me that my shoulder-length blonde hair, deep blue eyes, and small, thin face were wasted on a boy. She kept telling me that girls would kill to have my long, full eyelashes. I spent quite a bit of time, after she first said it, looking in a mirror to see what she meant, but I could never see anything special about them. I figured that she must be teasing me, but I really liked my aunt, so I never got angry. What did bother me, at this point in my life, occurred when I used the telephone. My voice hasn't deepened yet, but since I had developed the verbal skills of an adult, people who didn't know who was calling would call me ma'am. I tolerated it, knowing that in a few years, I would begin to sound like a man. When I had read about the upcoming play, in an announcement posted on the community bulletin board in the library, I knew that I wanted to be a part of it. But when I went to the theater's casting call, they told me that they didn't have any roles for a 15-year-old boy. In fact, the only role for a young teen was a part for a 15-year-old girl. If no young ladies apply, would you be interested in trying out for that role? You have an androgynous face and body, and your voice sounds feminine because it is still high-pitched. With the right makeup, you could be made to look quite convincing in the role, the director, Mr. Tucker, said. Thanks, but I don't think so. I'd never live it down. My dear boy, this is the theater. In William Shakespeare's day, no women were permitted to be actors. Men played all of the women's roles. There is no stigma in acting as someone that you are not. A real man does not fear ridicule from the great unwashed masses. He is confident in his abilities and sexuality. Let loose your petty teenage sexual mores, and embrace the maturity of a real man. Look at Dustin Hoffman, Patrick Swayze, and Wesley Snipes, to name just a few who have acted in women's clothing over the past few years. I came here to help out, but I would prefer not to play a girl, sir. Isn't there anything else that I could do? Well, if you don't want to join the great fraternity of actors, then we can always use you as an assistant. I said, an assistant what? An assistant anything, Mr. Tucker said. An assistant carpenter, an assistant painter, an assistant electrician maybe. I don't know anything about being an electrician. That's the point of being an assistant. You help somebody who does know what they are doing, and in addition to being helpful, you learn to do the work. I thought about it for a few seconds and said, okay, Mr. Tucker. I'll do my best. Then you're hired, Assistant Carrie. For your first job, would you ask the lovely Maria, working behind the boxes on stage left, to show you how to make a pot of coffee? I live on the stuff and need copious amounts on a daily basis. From now on, that will be your job. Make sure that that pot is never empty. Okay, Carrie. Yes, sir. You mean those boxes on the right over there. First lesson. When talking about directions on a stage, you always talk as if you are on stage facing an audience. Stage left would be on your left if you were on stage. Okay. Okay, Mr. Tucker. I've got it. I hurried over to Maria and she showed me how to make coffee. Over the following days I learned a lot of new things. And I learned every inch of the theater, from the cellar to the rafters, as I helped out. Whenever space was limited, I was called to do the job. My shorter stature and thin frame allowed me to squeeze in where others could not. Preparations for the play continued at a dynamic rate. In between construction duties, I helped out in the makeup department. The director wanted everybody, who was not acting in the play, to be able to fill in for anybody else. Marge, the chief makeup person, taught me a lot. When I arrived very early one Saturday morning, she showed me how to apply makeup to an actor's face for a stage performance, using my face. It wasn't like the makeup that women generally use. It was very overpronounced. She explained that the stage lighting required that special makeup be used so that the actors would look normal to an audience. After she made me up, she took me out onto the stage and showed me how it looked under the incredibly bright lights. I was astounded at the difference. In the dressing room, I looked like a Halloween freak, but on stage I looked almost normal. Faces of people without makeup blurred into featureless blobs. After we had returned to the dressing room, Mr. Tucker poked his head in and motioned to Marge. She went to the door and spoke to him for a minute. Then she came back to where I was sitting and applied cold cream to my face to remove the makeup. When my face was clean, I started to rise. She put a hand on my shoulder and said, "Wait, I want to show you something else." She started working on my face again with what looked like regular cosmetics. As she worked, she explained what she was doing and why. When she was done, she started working on my hair. The whole time that she was working, I watched her actions in the large mirror on the dressing table. I saw as she slowly changed my appearance from one of a young boy to one of a young girl. Under her expert ministrations, I became a pretty-looking girl of 15. I was entranced by the transformation. When she was done, she said, "Well, Carrie, what do you think?" "I think that it's amazing. I look like the twin sister that I don't have. But I still wouldn't want to play the part of a Daphne. It would be too embarrassing if anyone ever found out. Watch this." She went over to a cupboard and returned with a blonde wig. After 10 minutes of fitting it to my head with some kind of adhesive, she stepped back out of the way. It was incredible. It looked like it had grown there. The hair fell down my back almost to my waist. She stood behind me and began combing and brushing it. Then she put in a red ribbon, which held it all behind me. "Your own mother wouldn't recognize you now. Go show Mr. Tucker. He wanted to see it when it was done." "Did he put you up to this?" "Yes. But don't be angry. It's all in fun. He wanted to see if he was right about your features. There are only cast members in the theater and nobody will say anything to hurt you. Come on, I'll take you." "I don't know Marge. I'm embarrassed. It's one thing to do it here, with you. We're friends. But I'm nervous about letting anybody else see." "Oh, come on. I promise you that nobody will laugh. Besides, it's still very early and only a couple of members of the company are even here at this hour. Most won't arrive until noon." So together we walked out onto the stage. Mr. Tucker looked at me and stared. "I knew it. You could have done the role of Daphne if you had been willing. The clothes could handle the rest of the body. And your voice still sounds like a 15-year-old girl's. What do you think, Debbie?" Debbie was the girl that had been cast for the role of Daphne. She was 17 but was cast as the 15-year-old because no other young girls had applied. "I think that he's prettier than I am. I'm jealous. And I love the hair. Do I get to wear that wig for my performance?" Marge said, "No, I have a different one for you. Yours has a little more red in it to better suit your complexion. This one is very close to Carrie's own hair, so I used this one on her. I mean him." "Sorry, Carrie." Debbie said, "He may have a prettier face than I do, but I know that I look better in a dress than he would. He just doesn't have the right shape. No hips to speak of. And his tush is non-existent." Barbara, the wardrobe mistress, spoke up for the first time. "Debbie, you're almost a grown woman. You know that all of that stuff can be faked, and it is faked every single day. Hollywood wardrobe people make careers by shaping bodies with fake appliances and special clothing. I could take Carrie into the back room and within 2 hours turn him into the hottest looking woman in this town. He already has the face for it. I've got $10 that says you can't make him look better than I do in my costume." Mr. Tucker said, "I'll cover that bet. I have every confidence in Barbara. She's the best." Barbara reached for my hand and said, "Come with me, Carrie." I pulled back. "Now wait a minute. I never agreed to do this." Mr. Tucker said, "Carrie, have I been wrong about you?" "What do you mean?" I got the impression over the past couple of weeks that you were interested in becoming a thespian. You've always been willing to try anything associated with our little company. I was amazed at the maturity of one so young. And you've adapted to every job that you've been given. This is just another job. An acting job. Nobody is going to think you any less a man. Quite the opposite. As I told you when you first came to us, a mature man is confident in his abilities and sexuality. Have I been wrong about you? Please subscribe for the next part, and visit my Patreon page for early access. Patreon.com/Eden07. Link in the comment, thanks.